Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season '09, Episode '04. Have you ever wondered why some people consistently achieve their goals, while, others just seem caught off guard by obstacles? Today, we're diving into John C. Maxwell's How Successful People Think to uncover the powerful discipline of realistic thinking. And this isn't about crushing your dreams or anything like that. It's really about grounding them in a way that actually makes them achievable. So this deep dive is pretty crucial if you're looking to bridge that gap, between aspiration and actually getting things done.
It is, and it's fascinating because Maxwell himself, he admits he initially resisted this whole idea. Yeah, early in his career, he kind of saw realistic thinking as, I don't know, a bit negative, like a drain on creativity maybe, something
Yeah.
that would interfere with his optimistic flow. But as he got more experience, he had this really significant realization. It reminds me of what Max Dupree, the chairman emeritus of Herman Miller, Inc., he wisely put it. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality.
That's a strong statement. Define reality. So how does Maxwell actually define reality here? What are we talking about?
Well, for Maxwell, it sort of boils down to this, the difference between what we wish for and what is.
Yeah.
It's that gap, right? And he learned that facing this difference, like head on, became totally foundational for his business. It gave him this profound sense of certainty and security, as he puts it. He realized that real problem solving and really learning from your mistakes, that could only happen when he stopped sort of avoiding the truth and instead embraced realistic thinking, not just reacting, but, proactively building this mindset into his daily life and getting his key leaders to do it too. It was a complete shift for him.
Wow, yeah, that's a huge shift, going from actively avoiding it to making it a cornerstone. So, for you listening, the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We're going to try and understand not just what realistic thinking is, but maybe more importantly, why it's so vital, how it actually adds real concrete value to your life, and, the practical bit, how you can actually cultivate this discipline yourself. This isn't just theory, right? It's about putting it into practice. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. For someone who's maybe a natural optimist, like Maxwell was, or just anyone who really thrives on positive thinking, why should they embrace something that, well, might seem like it dims hope a little or curbs enthusiasm? What does realistic thinking really add?
That's a really common thought, isn't it? This idea that it's just pessimism in disguise. And Maxwell tackles that directly. He argues it doesn't actually undermine your faith. It doesn't lessen your ability to spot opportunities either. Instead, it kind of acts as a force multiplier for those very things. It adds huge value because it provides this solid foundation, a foundation for your optimism to actually achieve something real. He gives 8 pretty compelling reasons why this mindset isn't just helpful, but, well, essential.
8 reasons. Okay, let's maybe dive into some of the really impactful ones. How does it actually transform our approach?
Okay, well, think about it like this. First, realistic thinking dramatically minimizes downside risk. Now, most people kind of get that actions have consequences, right? Intuitively. But realistic thinking pushes you further, not just acknowledging consequences, but really meticulously figuring out what they could be, especially the bad ones. So by planning for that worst case scenario, you're not like inviting it to happen. You're building fortifications beforehand, minimizing the chance of negative outcomes. It's really about being prepared, not paranoid. It lets you take calculated risks with way more confidence.
Okay, so it's risk mitigation, not trying to avoid risk altogether. That makes sense. It sounds like it could actually help you take bolder action because you've got that safety net thought out. And besides just avoiding problems, does it help you, get where you actually want to go? Oh, absolutely. And that leads right into the second point. Realistic thinking gives you a target and a really robust game plan. Maxwell saw tons of business people who had just boundless hope for their ventures. They hoped it would work out. But here's the critical thing. Hope feels good, but it isn't a strategy, it's an emotion. Realistic thinking forces you to look at the facts of where you are now, define specific, achievable targets, and then develop a concrete, actionable game plan to hit them. And doing that usually simplifies procedures too, making things more efficient. Like remember James Allen, he put it so well, until thought is linked with purpose, there is no intelligent accomplishment. Hope is nice, but purpose, fueled by realistic thinking, that's what actually builds things.
That's a really clear distinction. Moving from just passively wishing to actively, purposefully achieving something. And if we're talking achievement, then growth has to be part of that. How does realistic thinking help spark growth? Exactly. That's number 3. Realistic thinking is an undeniable catalyst for change. See, if you just rely only on hope for success, you often end up kind of passive. Like success is just out there. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Chance or luck. But staring reality right in the face, that creates this powerful internal drive for action. It pushes you to see where change is genuinely needed.
Yeah.
And I mean, you simply cannot have growth without change, right? It shifts the control from, external factors back to you, your own agency.
Right, it reframes it. You're not just waiting, you're actively seeking solutions. And if you're taking action, you definitely need confidence. How does this mindset provide that security?
Oh, this is so critical. Fourth, it provides deep security. Think about it. When you've really thought through the worst that could happen and you've got actual contingency plans in place, something changes inside you. You become way more confident, more resilient. So much disappointment in life comes from that huge gap between our, rosy expectations and maybe a harsher reality. Realistic thinking shrinks that gap. It turns potential shocks into things you already anticipated, challenges you're ready for. This foresight, not just blind optimism, is what really builds security.
It sounds like confidence through being prepared,
Yeah.
which I imagine would naturally improve how others see you too.
Right.
So what about credibility, especially for leaders?
Spot on. That's the fifth point. Realistic thinking gives you credibility. I mean, think about leaders who seem constantly surprised by events, always caught off guard. They lose trust pretty fast, don't they? But leaders who consistently show their thinking realistically, planning strategically, they position their teams, their organizations for actual success over time. They're not afraid to ask those tough, maybe uncomfortable questions before launching into some grand vision. Questions like, okay, honestly, is this even possible with what we have right now? Or does this dream really benefit everyone, or just a few? Or have I really identified and talked about all the things that are going to make this difficult? That kind of foresight earns respect. It builds trust. And that credibility, it helps you build something real, which is number 6. Realistic thinking provides a concrete foundation to build on. Thomas Edison, he famously said something like, the value of a good idea is in using it.
Brilliant idea is just, well, a nice thought until you subject it to the harsh light of reality. Realistic thinking strips away the wish part. It makes an idea usable, actionable.
You can't build a strong house floating in the air, can you? It needs a solid foundation. Well, your biggest ideas, your most careful plans, they're no different. Realistic thinking gives you that solid ground to build on.
That's a great analogy. It really grounds things, makes them tangible. What about when things inevitably go wrong? Is realistic thinking still helpful then?
Oh, absolutely. 7th point. Realistic thinking is a steadfast friend to those in trouble. When problems pop up, and they always do, right? When chaos feels like it's taking over, realistic thinking gives you something solid to fall back on, something to anchor you. It provides, as Maxwell says, certainty in the midst of uncertainty. And you can imagine how reassuring that is. It brings stability when you need it most. It's like having the blueprint ready when the storm hits. And finally, number 8, and maybe the most compelling reason, realistic thinking brings the dream to fruition. The British novelist John Galsworthy, he observed, idealism increases in direct proportion to one's distance from the problem. Think about that. If you stay too far away, too abstract about a problem, you can never really solve it. And it's the same with a dream. If you don't take a hard, honest, realistic look at it, what it's really going to demand, the obstacles it will face, it just stays a wish, a nice thought. Realistic thinking isn't about making the dream smaller. It's the essential path to actually move it from just an idea to a real thing.
Wow. That's a really convincing case for embracing something that, might feel a bit counterintuitive at first. So for those of us listening who are ready to, move from wishing to actually doing, how do we do it? How do we become more realistic thinkers? Maxwell obviously figured this out for himself. He must have some practical steps, right? How do we cultivate this?
He absolutely does. He lays out 5 practical steps. And they're surprisingly straightforward, actually, but they can be really transformative. The very first step is maybe the hardest. Develop a genuine appreciation for truth. Now, that sounds simple, right? But here's the catch. Truth can be really intensely uncomfortable. President Harry S. Truman had that famous line, didn't he? I never give them hell, I just tell the truth, and they think it is hell. It just shows how deeply we resist truths that don't fit our narrative.
That's a brilliant quote. It captures that visceral reaction people have, doesn't it, to unwelcome facts. It reminds me of what Winston Churchill said, too. Men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing has happened. Like we'd rather just avoid it.
Exactly. And the journalist Ted Koppel said something similar more recently. He said, our society finds truth too strong a medicine to digest undiluted. In its purest form, truth is not a polite tap on the shoulder. It is a howling reproach. So look, if you want to be a truly realistic thinker, you just have to get comfortable facing the unvarnished truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it challenges your own biases. Okay, so once you're committed to seeking truth, the second step is crucial. Do your homework. Realistic thinking needs rigorous fact-gathering, almost like you're a detective investigating your own decisions. Chester Bowles, former governor and ambassador, he gives some great advice on this. He said something like, when you approach a problem, strip yourself of preconceived opinions and prejudice, assemble and learn the facts, make the most honest decision you can, and then stick to it. Exception quote. Basically, your thinking can't possibly be sound if it's built on bad data or just assumptions or old information. And this also means actively seeking out and learning from other people who face similar stuff. Your thinking doesn't always have to be brand new. It just has to be solid. Grounded in facts you can verify.
Right. So moving past just gut feelings or what everyone else says and really digging into the data with an open mind, that kind of thoroughness seems like it would lead straight into the next step.
It really does. The third step is to think through the pros and cons. But this isn't just about making a quick list in 2 columns, no. It's about a really meticulous examination of the issue from every possible angle you can think of, and deeply weighing the potential impact, the real weight of each pro and each con. This disciplined process forces you to dig deeper into the facts you gathered, to really count the cost and anticipate the benefits of any path you might take. It's about depth, not just listing things out. Then comes the fourth step, and Maxwell considers this the absolute essence of realistic thinking. Picture the worst-case scenario. This means deliberately, in a structured way, running mental simulations of potential failures. You have to ask yourself those really hard questions like, okay, what if sales fall way short of what we projected? What if revenue hits rock bottom? And I mean real rock bottom, not just a slightly uncomfortable version. What if we don't win that crucial account? What if our best player or our key team member gets sick right when we need them most?
Okay, I can almost hear some listeners pushing back right now. Doesn't that just feel inherently negative? Isn't there a really fine line between being prepared and just creating paralyzing anxiety? Or maybe even creating a self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's such a crucial distinction to make. Absolutely. The goal here is not to be negative. It's not to expect the worst thing to happen. It's about being prepared in case it does. That's the key difference. This process actually frees you up. It gives you the foresight, the confidence to create strong contingency plans. By facing potential failures up front, you lessen that psychological weight of uncertainty. It makes you more confident, more decisive when you do take those calculated risks. Like Charles Hole advised, deliberate with caution, but act with decision. Being mentally ready for anything actually grounds you in reality. It gives you the best shot at a positive outcome no matter what happens. And then finally, the fifth step ties it all together. Align your thinking with your resources. So when you meticulously weighed the pros and cons, and you've rigorously looked at the worst-case scenarios, you'll inevitably become really aware of any gaps. These are the differences between what you want to achieve and what actually exists in your current reality, particularly your available resources. Money, time, people, skills, whatever. Once you've clearly identified those gaps, then you can strategically use your resources to fill them. I mean, that's exactly what resources are for, right? Bridging that gap between your dreams and your capabilities.
That is a really comprehensive framework. Thinking realistically.
Yeah.
So let's bring this down to earth. What does this look like in a real-world, maybe high-stakes situation? Can you give us a powerful example where realistic thinking, maybe applied on a large scale, made a huge difference?
Oh, a perfect example, really compelling, is Super Bowl XXX Fix. That was the one on February 3, 2002 in New Orleans. Now remember, this was just a few months after the terrible events of September 11th, 2001. So the U.S. Secret Service immediately designated it a national security special event, which basically meant the security planning was going to be, well, the most rigorous imaginable, unprecedented, really.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what did that level of realistic thinking actually look like on the ground? How did it translate into actual actions?
It was pretty extraordinary. The Secret Service brought in hundreds of agents getting into the Superdome. Access was intensely restricted. Screening protocols were massively intensified. They blocked off roads for miles around the nearby interstate, completely shut down. And they established a comprehensive no-fly zone over the whole area. Anyone arriving saw these imposing 8-foot fences, huge concrete barriers placed strategically to stop vehicles, and sharpshooters positioned with clear sight lines on rooftops all around the stadium. Every single person going in. They went through thorough pat-downs, baggage inspections before finally going through metal detectors. It was intense, but here's the really crucial part, the essence of that realistic thinking. The Secret Service didn't just stop at preventing things. They also meticulously planned for the absolute worst-case scenario. They didn't just draft extensive evacuation plans, they drilled them, repeatedly.
with everyone at the Superdome. So security staff, stadium employees, everyone knew exactly what to do in any kind of emergency. That level of realistic thinking, that preparation, especially right after 9/11, it was just unparalleled.
And what was the outcome of all that incredible foresight, that intense planning?
Well, the New Orleans mayor at the time, Mark Morial, he summed it up perfectly the day before the game. He said, "We want to send a message to all visitors that New Orleans is going to be the safest place in America." And you know what? It worked. That meticulous, realistic planning allowed tens of thousands of people to just feel secure, worry-free. They could just enjoy the game because the leaders, the planners, they had already worried about absolutely everything else. That's the real power of realistic thinking when you embrace it at every level.
Yeah. This deep dive into John C. Maxwell's How Successful People Think really does illuminate the transformative power of realistic thinking. It's clearly not about stifling your optimism or, pouring cold water on your biggest dreams. Instead, it seems like it's about equipping yourself, giving yourself the foresight and the clarity to plan effectively, adapt when you need to, and build this really profound sense of confidence. Ultimately, it's about turning those potential challenges into actual opportunities for growth, for success.
It's exactly right. It's about building a solid mental foundation, but not on, the shifting sands of wistful thinking. Building it on the bedrock of facts, of careful planning, of thoughtful consideration. It's about getting a genuine sense of certainty, maybe even security, in what often feels like a pretty uncertain world, doesn't it? It's knowing you've thought through the variables, you've prepared for what might happen, and because of that, you're actually ready for whatever comes next.
Which brings us to a really important question for you, the listener, to carry forward. Something to really think about as you navigate your own goals. And this comes straight from our source material. Am I building a solid mental foundation on facts so that I can think with certainty?